basically, the department's role in being involved in the regulation of cannabis comes from the passage of Senate Bill 94, which specifically calls out the State Water Resources Control Board and the Department of Fish and Wildlife that were tasked with determining if either entity, us or the Water Board, finds, based on substantial evidence, that cannabis cultivation is causing significant adverse impacts on the environment anywhere within the state, then we wouldn't issue new licenses or increase the total number of plants in that area until we were able to determine that we had been able to remediate that impact. In terms of kind of how we in the department view some of the issues around water use and cannabis, is that we wanted to start by recognizing, similar to what Derek was saying, but he had some nice data to show this, but we recognize that the total cannabis water footprint in the state is extremely low relative to many other common agricultural crops, and that really, as we all know, due to the history of the illegality of the cannabis cultivation industry in the state, that it's really the location of some of these primarily legacy cannabis cultivation areas that can be problematic because of their setting in these oftentimes naturally intermittent stream headwater settings that are remote and forested, and oftentimes in close proximity to listed species or sensitive habitat. Another thing that isn't unique to cannabis but can be an issue in some of these legacy settings is that, and really anywhere within the state, is the timing of cannabis water demand. And this is relatively, I think, specific to outdoor and greenhouse crops. This isn't as much of an issue with indoor crops, but that the timing of just plant demand relative to surface flow availability is not great. That the highest demand is when flow availability is lowest. The department is also concerned about the potential for cumulative effects to in-stream flow from many diverters, both licensed and unlicensed. And the data suggests, and a lot of Chris's work really with Ed and others at the CRC really show that that there are a variety of different types of water usage patterns associated with these different types of cultivators. And so, we're trying to get a better handle on distinguishing between the different sort of demographics of the cannabis industry, and focusing on the future sort of trends in water usage among these different types of farms that we're seeing emerge on the landscape. Again, sort of echoing some of the stuff that Chris was saying, we're concerned about the potential for stream flow depletion or surface water depletion from well use for cannabis. And as we just learned, from Chris and some of his work, is that the majority of cultivators in Northern California are meeting their water demand through well use, which may in some ways be sort of an unintended consequence of the policy, is that in a lot of ways it's actually easier for folks to get licensed to meet their water needs through well use as opposed to surface diversion. So more people are doing that, and there's other reasons for that as well. But we currently in the Water Board as well have a real lack of any sort of empirical on the ground data investigating that relationship in particular places within the state. So that's something that's concerning us. And just in general, the department really encourages cultivators to try to invest in water storage, to get a good handle on what their water needs are, invest in the storage to meet those needs, and fill that storage in the wet winter months. This is not unique to Northern California, but particularly relevant there. And just in general, to try to implement the best management practices around water use as possible, to really try to lower that general rate of around 10% that Derek mentioned, that in terms of the ability to increase efficiency and use less water. We also recognize that a lot of those BMPs just aren't out there yet, and so we're really happy that entities like the CRC are helping to develop those BMPs, and we encourage folks to use them. So in order to sort of meet the mandates of SB 94, the department has developed a fairly large-scale cannabis program. So we have over 100 staff scattered throughout the state, with folks in the ranches in the Sacramento area, as well as out in the regions. We have almost half of our staff is in the law enforcement division. But we have a permitting program, people that work directly with cultivators, an enforcement division, an outreach program that hosts permitting workshops to try to help folks through the permitting process. We have a restoration and remediation program that actually the public solicitation for that grant program, I believe, ends today. If anybody is wanting to apply for that, but that's intended to fund a variety of watershed enhancement and restoration and remediation actions associated with typically illegal cannabis production on public land. And then we have a monitoring program, as Chris mentioned. That's what I'm a part of, and so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that specifically. So again, we're the California Environmental Monitoring and Assessment Program, or CMAP. We got started in 2018, so we're only 3 years into this, and we have dedicated funding through the taxation of cannabis, and also that mandate that I mentioned through SB 94. And so we're really asking some broad questions about how are the following parameters potentially influenced by land use, including cannabis cultivation and other ecological drivers. So we're assessing aquatic, riparian, and terrestrial habitats, looking at community composition and structure of regionally relevant species, variety of species throughout the state. And where possible, we're going to be establishing in-stream flow thresholds, and then monitoring other water quality parameters like dissolved oxygen flow and temperature. Generally, too, we're trying to be able to assess the cumulative effects or potential impacts from all these different land uses and ecological drivers. And additionally, this data will support a variety of actions and within the department. So we're providing data that could help meet the objectives of the State Wildlife Action Plan, as well as data that could just be used generally to help inform drought and wildfire response. I also wanted to mention that we have a project underway right now with Chris and Ted and other folks with the CRC, where we have contracted with them to continue working on a series of cannabis water demand models that Chris and Ted primarily developed, and we used an earlier version of one of these models, and this work is described in one of Chris and Ted's papers. And anyway, so yeah, we found that first version of the model to be really useful for helping to predict the amount of water extracted for cannabis based on operation type, size, the amount of storage at a particular farm. And then, based on basically self-reported data from cannabis cultivators, you can, basically give it this information about those things related to the cultivation site itself, and then the model can estimate what the amount of water would be that would be extracted for cannabis to meet the demands of that particular farm at a monthly time step. And so we're working with them to continue that project, to make it applicable over more of the state, and also to try to develop some specific models to elicit cannabis production. We know, and Eric mentioned too, that there's a wide variety of water use patterns associated with these different demographics within the cannabis industry. So we're really interested in trying to do a better job of capturing what the illicit sort of water footprint is relative to other types of cultivation. And I'll end it there. Thanks.